mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about episode 5 of Apple TV's Presumed Innocent, entitled Pregame. I said last week that it wasn't last week, it was yesterday, that I appreciated the title of last week's title of The Burden because it had a couple of interpretations. This week, I don't know what the fuck pregame is referring to. I only know pregame within two contexts: the time before a sporting event and drinking before you go to the bar or the club so you spend less money while you're there. I don't know how that ties into this episode, particularly given the fact that last week's title of The Burden feels even more appropriate this week as Rusty continues to make himself an even greater burden, particularly on his defense team, more so than his family. Well, it took all the way until episode 5, but I think we finally reached an episode that feels mostly like filler. Precious little happened this week, and this episode felt like... Wait a minute, I get the title now. This episode felt like pregame for the trial. Problem is, no episode should feel like it exists just to meet an episode order, and that's what this one felt like. They advanced a couple of ideas a little bit. How could you not with 40 minutes of TV time? But it felt like the precious little movement we got in this episode could have been thrown into other episodes. Like, I couldn't say how many minutes of this episode felt valuable. I can't quantify it, but it feels like we probably could have taken maybe like 10 relevant minutes from this episode, put it in the previous one or two, made those only slightly longer, and just lost this one altogether. But far be it from me to accuse an episode of not doing shit, particularly an episode of a legal show, without providing some evidence. So let me provide my burden of proof for what I'm accusing this episode of. Hey everybody, I just want to take a small break from this review to talk about the various other ways you can engage with me on other platforms. If you're so inclined, and I understand why you wouldn't, I am an acquired taste, but you can join the Patreon where you can get extra content like retro reviews, where I review old shows and movies to see if they still hold up today, Mike's Musings, where I talk about shows I'm watching that I don't cover on the channel, or Mike's VOD, where you can commission me to watch a show, which I will then review on the channel. And if you want to engage with me and chat with me more directly, I also implore you to join the Discord and follow the Facebook page. I set up channels in the Discord for all of us to discuss the shows I'm reviewing on the channel, and I also drop new videos in there since it's the easiest platform for me to share to from my phone. The Facebook can be really fun because I sort of live comment on shows I'm watching, often while under the influence, I'm not going to lie. And I'll also share news there, both about television and film, and about myself as well. So if you like my content, you want to be more engaged, you think I'm charming, or you simply want to show support, feel free to sign up for the Patreon or join the Discord or Facebook today. Links to all platforms are in every video description. Remember to share all my shit to your respective social media platforms. And now back to this review. One of the plots advanced is the one that I alluded to in the previous video, is one that I alluded to. The idea that Tommy is the person that Carolyn is scared of, or was scared of. Now, the show will then allow us to infer that Tommy might have been the person who committed the crime. I'm not willing to go that far, but they definitely are telling us that he might have been the person that she was scared of, for sure. There's a scene about maybe midway through the episode that's a flashback to Tommy very intimidatingly and directly confronting Carolyn about having supposedly said that she doesn't want to work with him. It takes a certain kind of person to confront someone else over something like that. Like, you know she has to want that to be a secret because that's embarrassing to say you don't want to work with someone, or scary if the reason is because they might behave like Tommy did in that scene questioning her. Like, if she is scared of him, that scene went a long way toward justifying that fright. Then we also have another scene, or early on, it's like one of the first few scenes, where Tommy is questioning Eugenia on if she had a relationship with Rusty. Now, you remember Eugenia is the person who has been called as a witness. She's a colleague of theirs who's been called as a witness to testify solely to her knowledge of the extent of Rusty and Carolyn's relationship. Tommy questions her about this very rudely and obtrusively, but under the guise of it being necessary for the case, and she's a witness. He says he wants to make sure that there's no personal bias, to which Eugenia responds that if there is personal bias, or if that is a factor, then he should recuse himself. Given the later scene, the one that was actually a flashback to him confronting Carolyn, you have to wonder if maybe Eugenia could be the person that Carolyn confided in about being scared of Tommy, and that maybe she didn't directly go tell him, but somehow that got back to Tommy. So Eugenia is aware of both Carolyn and Rusty's relationship, but also aware that Carolyn has some issues with Tommy. This episode also furthers the idea that Tommy's pro-Carolyn, anti-Rusty agenda is going to affect his ability to try this case. At one point, Nico questions him about looking into the validity of Liam Reynolds. That's the guy that Bunny Davis killed, who's currently in prison for that crime. He wants to know if Tommy eliminated that possibility that Liam could have done this, orchestrated this from the inside. And yes, that's a long shot to go after a guy in prison for this murder, but that's not the point. The point is, did you eliminate it as a possibility? Which Tommy clearly did not, because just as he's being accused of, he's only concerned about it being Rusty. And then lastly, you have Tommy's opening statement to close the episode, which seems to lean more heavily on how he felt about Carolyn than making the case that Rusty is the person who committed the crime. He also gets on his soapbox in this episode very briefly about justice and how it's just no one cares about justice anymore in front of the press. Now you couple this with this little rant that he has to Nico about how Nico, Rusty, and Raymond made it so that no one respects him. And all of this serves to sufficiently concern Nico and the audience, I'm assuming, about Tommy's mental state. He even asked him at one point, but it's cut off, like what's been up with you the last month? So yes, now I've spent a few minutes talking about Tommy. All of that kind of sounds like a lot. But aside from the opening statement at the end of the episode, we're talking about only a few minutes of screen time, like 2-minute scene here or there. And I'd argue that this is really only the only significant progress that this episode made. Barbara and Rusty's storylines largely just jogged in place this episode, furthering the idea of Tommy's involvement. Rusty wastes more time going after Ratzer, and in ways that undermine Rusty as a character and only cause more trouble for his defense team. Like, rather than progressing the plot point about his skin being under Carolyn's nails, they spend more time just pedaling in place on Ratzer. Like, Rusty inexplicably tries to break in Ratzer's house after he's left, and that was just baffling to me. Like, one, what are you expecting to find in Ratzer's house? And two, how, as a lawyer, someone who would have this knowledge, are you expecting to make use of whatever you find after illegally breaking into his house? Then how, also, as the fucking defendant, do you plan to make use of whatever you find and not make yourself look more guilty? Like there's nothing about this that makes sense at all. So I'm just sitting there like, what is he doing? And why is this show making a lawyer that, up to this point, they told us is a smart and great lawyer? Why are they making him do something that a lawyer would know better than to do? And then Ratzer catches him and he's just like, I just want to talk. Well, if you just wanted to talk, why'd you wait till after you left his house, bucko? Like, what? Like, it's not even a good lie. So again, for a supposedly brilliant lawyer, he's also an incredibly shitty liar. And I'm just like, so not only are we going to keep that plot in place this week, but we're also going to undermine just how smart that the show has told us Rusty is up until this point. Not wise. They bring in Ratzer for questioning, and despite how hard Maya presses him, he insists on knowing nothing about Bunny Davis or Liam Reynolds. So where do we end up with Rusty after this week? The same place we started. Him equally obsessed with Ratzer and him getting equally nowhere with it. And it looks like Ratzer, to me, it looks like Ratzer's in the clear, and we pissed away 2 episodes of Rusty time on Ratzer. Barbara's plotline, kind of the same. Another meeting with Cliff, again, this time at his place. It's an incredibly romantic and sensual setting, which I would expect from Cliff. I mean, you're trying to fuck a married woman. You're gonna want to make it as romantic looking as possible. But it was kind of weird how it was like the show itself was almost trying to make me go like, oh, this is beautiful, as a woman sneaking to another man's house to cheat on her husband. Like, I don't know. It felt like they were trying to get like an awe out of me, like, oh, this is so beautiful. I didn't. But we ultimately find out that they only kissed, and we remain in the same place with the Cliff storyline, again, just like we are with Rusty, where it's just like, where is this going? Like, I'm so desperate for this to matter. I'm so desperate for this to matter, beyond Barbara just using Cliff as a coping mechanism, that I thought for sure, when Tommy was giving his opening statement, that they were going to pan across the jury and we were going to see Cliff sitting in the jury. I was sure. I'm like, I can't. And they took a long time to show the jury too. So I'm like, oh, he definitely going to be on the jury. But that's how bad I want the Cliff stuff to matter. like, I did like how she talked about, like, judging herself for staying with Rusty and forgiving him and still loving him, and how it felt good to feel wanted and know that she could still have someone. But still, like I said, where is this going? You bring in Lily Rabe to be this therapist, and this is all that we get? Like, this is it? It's got to at least start to tie into the main story at some point, right? I don't know. Like, Rusty learns about Cliff, and maybe he loses his shit even more. I don't know, something like that. Beats the shit out of Cliff. I don't know, but even that would feel redundant. But this, not redundant, repetitive. But this feels like a fairly inconsequential subplot that's just being dragged out. But that's why I figured Cliff would be on the jury. It's like, it feels so inconsequential that I feel like it must ultimately be of monumental importance. But I don't know, I guess we'll see. The last little idea that they advance is Raymond's conflict over whether or not Rusty did the crime. Raymond's wife believes that Rusty did do it. Raymond continues to claim that he believes Rusty's innocent, but there's this really weird dream sequence that was like incredibly shocking. Like, I like gasped, but it was shocking because it was so out of place on this show. But it suggests that that Raymond does think that Rusty is guilty. But yeah, that was a really weird scene. Like, I would have liked that scene on, like, The Boys, but on this, I'm like, that was really, like, it was shocking. Like, like it was effective. Like, I was like taken aback. But then immediately I was like, well, I was taken aback because I wouldn't have even been expecting anything like that to happen. So yeah, I'm not sure where this is going either with Raymond, since his doubts about Rusty just pedaled in place this week. But now we're delving into the question of Raymond's mental state as well. So I guess that's something to entertain, whether or not he's equally as up to or not up to the task as Tommy is not up to the task. So yeah, that concludes my case. This is my closing statement on why this episode was mid. We got some advancement with this idea that Tommy could be involved in the murder, one that I still don't even remotely take seriously, while the other main plot points just stood in place. Not a bad episode, not a good one. Pretty much filler for me over here, but you can let me know what you thought in the comments, and until next week, peace.